This is Father Patrick Briscoe.
And this is Father Bonaventure Chapman.
Welcome to Godsplaining. Thanks to all who support us. If you enjoy our podcast, please consider making a monthly donation to us on Patreon. Be sure to like and subscribe to Godsplaining wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, guys, before we get into this episode, though, I have a quick announcement from our friends at the St. Paul Center. The St. Paul Center is the Center for the Study of Scripture that was founded by Dr. Scott Hahn, located there in Steubenville, Ohio. And the opportunity is to make this Advent the best yet for you. Join fellow Catholics across the country for a Bible study unlike any other. Bible Across America is a nationwide Bible movement spearheaded by the St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology. Beginning November 7th, Catholics across the country will gather in parishes and in homes at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time every Wednesday. Together, you will have the opportunity to encounter Christ in sacred scripture, sit at his feet as disciples, and build one another up so that you can go out and share the light of Christ, spread his teachings with others. This study will be led by my friend Dr. Shane Owens, who's an assistant professor of theology at Franciscan University. He's a great thinker. He's really compelling, easy to listen to. You'll learn so much from him. He's the author of a new book, Return to the Heart, which will lead you through the biblical spirituality of St. Augustine's Confessions. If you get that book, you'll be able to understand something of the mind and the heart of our new Pope Leo. For this podcast for Bible Across America, joining him in studio are some of today's leading Catholic voices. Father Boniface Hicks, a great monk of St. Vincent Archabbey, Heather Kim, co-host of the podcast Abiding Together, Alex Jones, the founder of Hallow, my friend Katie McGrady, host of the Katie McGrady Show on the Catholic channel on SiriusXM, many others. Over the course of the 7-week study, you will find what it means in your life to affirm Christ as teacher and Lord in your daily living. So join this new Bible study, share Christ with others by visiting stpaulcenter.com/Advent. That's stpaulcenter.com/Advent. Father Bonaventure, we're coming, as we're getting together to record this episode, we're coming just on the heels of the Rosary Pilgrimage, which for me is just a whole mixture of things. I said during the pilgrimage, this is as close as Dominicans get to Christmas. I mean, for me as an organizer, it has so much of the feel of Christmas.
Yeah,
because
that's true.
when you're getting together for the holidays, you have to plan everything. You got to pack the car. You got to worry about all the gifts and what everyone's going to eat and all that. All of those things are part of the Rosary Pilgrimage from the perspective of the friar organizers, trying to get everything lined up and make the day happen. And when everything came together this year, as it did so beautifully, thanks to the contributions of the brothers, I just find myself overwhelmed by it. You popped over to say the Rosary in between all your other obligations. I was so grateful to see you there. But I don't know, what struck you about the day?
It was great the statue is gorgeous. It's great to see ritual action in large proportion. Like, we do plenty of ritual things here at the house with 60 Dominicans. I've blessed to live in a big house like that. You're over in Rome, you have similar situation. But there's a point where quantity has a quality of its own, Right. And sitting up on there in the dais, sitting up in the sanctuary and looking out and watching as the statue processed with the army of Dominicans, and then also all the people praying and standing. It just said, we're doing this thing, which I spend most of my time in secular philosophy world kind of stuff, and this seems insane. Like, what are we doing? This is old pageantry business. But I think I see it. You just lean into it and you say, yeah, it might be old, it might be pageantry, but like, what are you doing? Scrolling phones? Yeah, that's better. It's its own sort of ritual, I suppose, but it's like a private ritual between you and, the evil one. Okay. So, but there was a moment where it was really cool where when I was looking out and the statue and with the brothers carrying it, we're making an L-shaped turn around some aisles because you have to get through this thing. And so the candles and the cross were leading the procession with Father Dominic Legg, leading the rosary. And then there was the army and then the statue. They were actually parallel, but in two different rows or something. And it was a cool motion where it's not just like there's a little group going around. It's like there's a long train that is actually taking up a bunch of places. And that was kind of a metaphor to my mind about like what ritual and what these great celebrations are. That we exist. It's not just one location point where you're there. It's covering a bunch of places. There's a trail to it. There's a start to it, and you're not always near one of those things. You might be in the middle somewhere. And a nice image of what the church is and what life is in terms of getting on to this kind of ritual train that's supposed to keep us in order, so we know without having to think every moment what I'm supposed to do. Rather, I just follow the person in front of me. I have some vision there. I've got something in the middle, and there's an end. All this was a dramatization of what I take what religion and what Catholicism is best at, is not just pageantry for pure pageantry stuff, but ritual and pageantry to remind us that life is something lived in a tradition and not something made up on the fly, but something that we all need as we go forward in developing as a church and people, and we learn from those who've gone before us, and not just in our families, but like the story of humanity in the West and what Christ has given us in the church. So I thought that was all beautiful.
Yeah, and I really like the way you're shaping all of this, because it's right along what I was thinking, which is this is immersive. This is an immersive day. Mm-hmm. You're in the basilica, so you've got the actual church covering you, and then you find yourself constantly in these crowds. You're just not alone.
Yeah,
and a lot of Christian life today is lonely.
Yeah.
And on the day of the Rosary Pilgrimage, it's impossible to be alone.
Yeah.
I think just not just for the friars, but for everyone. If you're one of those hundreds of people, the friars heard something like 800 confessions yesterday.
Yeah.
If you're one of those people, you were not alone. I mean, you were during your confession, but
right. No, and we talked about another episode. I remember about how easy it is to say something when other people are saying things together, Pledge of Allegiance or particular prayers and such. But when all of a sudden the spotlight's on you, it's trickier and you might forget things. And so you need a script, right? Whereas in this case, but that's true in general, that it's easier to go through life in a sense with, not our own, everything on us, or with a little script we're always looking down at, but just following the others that are there, being ordered hopefully by, the various officials, as you spent a lot of time organizing, planning that day. Why? So that people could just be immersed in it and go with the flow, to use a silly word, that nonetheless is what it means to live as a Christian in the Catholic Church. It's like, we know what we're doing, just jump in. Yeah, just jump in and follow along and add a little piece if you want, but we're good. Just do what we got. Whether it's the moral life or the sacramental life or the religious life or whatever it might be. That's a great gift. And so it was on showcase there for just a moment. You get to see a glimpse of it as a part, but that part is a representative of a larger whole. And I think that's beautiful. And it's something that Europe has done. They do processions and these big things a little better than we do. But I think America is coming around to doing some of these Eucharistic conferences, as we saw before, the processions, Eucharistic processions, Corpus Christi kind of processions business, and then, of course, the Dominican Rosary Pilgrimage is a Dominican exemplar, you could say, of that.
One person who knew what it was like,
make the change,
to step into, to be immersed by the church, was the subject of today's episode, the newly named doctor of the church, Saint John Henry Newman.
Yeah,
how's that for a transition? The one who stepped in. Now, listeners might be surprised, if they know anything at all about Newman, they might be surprised to hear two Dominicans getting together to speak so enthusiastically about John Henry Newman, because, of course, John Henry Newman, as he was preparing to make this great change of life, it was either just before he entered the church or just after.
Yeah, I think it was just after.
Just
I'm
after.
Not sure.
He visited the Dominicans in Santa Maria Novella in
right,
Florence. And Santa Maria Novella in Florence was the home of great Thomistic thinkers just after Thomas Aquinas died. Mm-hmm. So it was one of the early hearts of Thomism. The oldest fresco, the oldest painting of St. Thomas Aquinas in the world is there at Santa Maria Novella.
I didn't know that.
They just discovered it a few years ago.
Oh, I'll have to look at that.
It's really quite an extraordinary work. So that place, Santa Maria Novella, is not just one holding of Dominicans.
Yeah.
It's a place that has a deep responsibility for advancing the thought, promoting the thought of St. Thomas. And Newman goes there, sees the beauty of the place, but discovers the friars more interested in their little apothecary perfume factory
Yeah, the rose water. Special rose water.
than the thought of St. Thomas, and issues a devastating critique of the order, saying essentially
It's kind of lost its charism, yeah.
that the order was dead.
Yeah, because Newman's a great preacher, and so he thinks maybe Dominicans will be where he'll be, because he's a great preacher for many years at St. Mary's in Oxford. And then he finds the rosewater thing. Now, to be fair, I love rosewater. Like, if that was my side job to my Dominican job, if I also had to be in charge of helping rosewater, who's to say that I wouldn't just like spend all my time like slowly shifting?
Nice,
like, I'll take an extra shift in there or something. It's quite nice.
Life is hard and smelly.
Yeah, especially back then, man. Yeah. You might have like the Dominicans are like, no, it's like air conditioning versus non-air conditioning down in Arizona. So you might find you're taking more shifts indoors there, you know, just to help out. Yeah, that's right.
But nonetheless, we are here to stand Saint John Henry Newman, the latest doctor of the church.
Yes.
Father Bonaventure, this man is not just one figure among many. He's an important figure for you, yourself, a convert of Oxford, from Oxford, or an Oxford-educated convert. I'm not sure exactly how I want to phrase that.
Yeah.
Given that you're from
Oxonian convert.
You're from upstate New York. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, upstate. Yeah.
How'd you like that?
Yeah, that's good. Right. So Oxford is the place of Newman. I mean, today even you go there and you're confronted with him. I think anyone. I was a seminarian there, Anglican trainee, an ordinand as they call them, and any Anglican there is confronted with Newman. You have to face him down. It's just in the way that like if you're a philosopher, you have to face Spinoza at some point. You have to face Newman if you're in Oxford. And even there's this beautiful Martyrs Memorial that just kind of, it's like a spire that extends out in the main street. And it looks like there's a cathedral underground. So you tell people like, oh, that's just the spire, the underground cathedral. But it has Ridley, Latimer, and Cranmer on it, the Martyrs Memorial. And that's put up because of the Oxford movement, because of Newman's relationship to and development of Anglo-Catholicism in Oxford. So we were just confronted with him. Maybe to say a brief thing about his life, of course, Newman born in 1801, dies in 1890, so he lives through the 19th century, basically the whole 19th century. Preached most of his time, of course. I mean, he had Vatican I in there as well. But he's an Anglican evangelical, convert growing up. I think it's one of the things that like corresponded to me as well with Newman is his journey was kind of mine. Going from evangelicalism to Anglicanism to Catholicism.
Yeah, explain a little bit about what that means, because I didn't have any sense for that actually until I met you. Because when you say the word evangelical, I think Texas.
Okay,
but that's not exactly what's at play here.
Yeah, they might be sort of instantiations of it in a particular way, cowboy boots and all. Shout out to Texans. In our we have a large group of Texans that listen to us. But evangelical tends to be, you could focus on. Think of it as like a low church kind of persuasion, some more congregationalist, but really the kind of warming of the heart. Now
a movement within Anglicanism. You know,
it's a new movement in Anglicanism. I mean, Wesley is kind of in this background because he was from Anglicanism and St. Aldate's in there. So remember in England, of course, there's just the Church of England, right? So it's the Church of England. So where we know Anglicanism, we call it Episcopalianism, of course. It's another denomination of Protestants. But in England, Anglicanism it's just the church of the country, right? Until recently, Catholics came back, of course, sort of thing. But they were booted out for a while, and all the bishops basically had gone over in the Reformation to Anglicanism. All the Dominicans, I think, no martyrs. We have no Anglican.
Not our proudest moment.
And there's this great moment where in Thomas More, when they're telling, you've got everyone's signed, all the bishops have signed over Thomas More. You have to come over to the king's side. And he says, all of them, Bishop John Fisher, and the person, no, of course not Fisher. And the other martyr with Thomas More, they celebrate the same feast day. So evangelicalism is like a low church kind of Pentecostal, not Pentecostal, I should say, it doesn't have a charismatic, but the kind of inward religion, the religion of the heart, a Wesleyan kind of movement. Which one of the great things about Newman, just to make another point about this, we're in danger of, I'm just going to talk forever and ever about tons of things because there's so much to talk about him. So I'm just warning you, I apologize in advance. This could be a multiple series. But Newman takes the Augustine view of like spoiling the Egyptians. He takes the goods from the Protestant world, the evangelical and the Anglican world, and brings it forward. For instance, his motto when he becomes a cardinal is cor ad cor loquitur, heart speaks to heart. And that's at the very start of his conversion to his kind of real acceptance of Christianity, is this, that it's got to be a heartfelt religion. That's his evangelicalism. And then he, of course, wants to add actually like the historical nature and the kind of liturgical and traditional and all this kind of business. But the heart of Newman is his heart, right? And this is crucial to him in all sorts of ways. And it's a taking up from that very early. So he doesn't reject, like Newman need not reject, as he thinks, and I think it's helpful to remind converts, I remind my own journey and others, that like there's plenty of good in that the Spirit's been doing in these other churches, and you'll find the fulfillment of that in the church, not the rejection. If you love the Bible, you'll find it in the Catholic Mass. If you love Christ and a personal relationship with him, you'll find it in the Catholic Church. If you love the salvation by grace and the mercy of God as opposed to works righteousness, guess what? We own that, right? That's our business with confession.
If you want a correct understanding of predestination, you will find that.
Yeah, exactly. If you want an instantiation of predestination, we've got Mary. You don't. What do you got? It's I could go on forever. But like, I think Newman's important about that he brings forth the best out of what was before and takes that with him.
And for me, explaining that context of the difference between some of these movements of Anglicanism is really essential, because it gives listeners a sense of what that movement was like in Newman's heart before he joined the Catholic Church, because there's already a lot there.
Yes.
So I wonder if you might say, Father Bonaventure, a little bit about the Oxford movement,
sure.
Or the Tractarian movement, it's sometimes called.
Yes.
And what that return to the Church Fathers and the ancient source of Christianity was like, because that's so much of what precipitated Newman's conversion. There's that great line attributed to him, so I don't know whether or not it's true, I'm asking you right now, to study history is to cease to be Protestant.
Yep, something like that. I think it's from Apologia Pro Vita Sua, his defense of his life, which he writes later because after he's converted, Reverend Charles Kingsley, an Anglican minister, accuses Newman of being hypocritical and lying. And there's nothing you can say worse to a duty-bound, Kantian kind of deontologist British man than that you lied. Like that will not.
I did not.
That will
not
stand. Yeah, exactly. Like I may have done lots of other things, but I did not. I'm not and I did not lie or dissuade people. And so the Apologia Pro Vita Sua, just like some of the great doctrines of the church, come out of charges against, sort of clarifying this beautiful story of a Protestant soul on its way to Catholicism. His autobiography, which is magnificent. Comes out of response to say, I did not. I never dissuaded. I never lied. Never dissimulated. And explain himself. His Apologia Pro Vita Sua is the defense of my life. So the Oxford movement is after. So he's gone to Oxford to study, and he gets attached with a bunch of a group of people led by largely John Keble, but also Edward Pusey. Who are looking at the earlier sources. They're trying to make sense of the Anglican Church, which is based on largely the prayer book. So it's lex orandi, so the law of believing, but also the creed. They have the 39 articles and some other things. And they're trying to make sense of how these relate. And it's often said that the Anglican Church has a Catholic prayer book and a Protestant articles of religion or creed. And so there's a tension there. And so oftentimes you find, at least in my experience, evangelical Anglicans will boot the prayer book because it's too Romish, right? And hold on to some of the creeds and some of the articles of religion, which are their kind of catechism, you could say. It's very short and extremely wide and open to interpretation, as all Anglicanism is. And other Anglicans like them, these ones said, no, the prayer book, lex orandi, lex credendi, the law of prayer is the law of belief. So the prayer book should determine what we believe, and then we got to figure out how do the articles make sense. And in a way that tracks for the time was Newman's and Pusey's and Keble's kind of discussion, writing about, and Newman wrote most of them, what the Anglican Church believes, and kind of resourcing it to attach the Catholic prayer book and the Catholic teachings to the articles. It ends gloriously in Tract 90, the last one, where people finally say, look, you said you're not a Catholic, but you are definitely a Catholic. Because in that one, Newman goes on, and you ought to read it, they're all available online, Tract 90, it's beautiful. Newman goes on a spree and goes for broke and tries to interpret the articles on the sacraments and others as in the Catholic way. So you have in the articles, just one example, it says, we do not believe in the Romanish doctrine of transubstantiation, a thing vainly to be wished or something. The Romanish doctrine. And Newman says, when they say, the article says we don't believe in the Romanish doctrine of transubstantiation, the articles are referring to the specific Roman Bellarminian, so Robert Bellarmine, his view of transubstantiation. They're not against the Catholic view of transubstantiation.
How interesting.
And at this point...
that's a very delicious interpretation.
It's fantastic. And at this point, you can read that, and you can read the whole thing. But at that point, I think rightly, everyone called uncle and said like,
all right,
you're done. Just do it.
Splitting a hair.
And there he goes. Yeah. But so the Oxford movement is a ressourcement of the Church Fathers and the tradition. It's not... Newman is often called the kind of father of Vatican II, even this around Vatican I, but Vatican II, because that kind of ressourcement movement of going back to the fathers and trying to make sure, and here's a surprise, Catholicism stands up to this scrutiny, whereas Anglicanism, he found out, did not. But it's a similar kind of going back to the sources, ad fontes.
Newman had the experience that many others had, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, of going to Jerusalem and marveling at the multiplicity of the churches. Is this correct? Right. I'm trying. I could be confusing it with Benson. That's why I'm asking.
I don't know,
because they're kind of like
good question.
Right along. And so if it wasn't Newman, it was Benson. And I'm sorry that I didn't look at this point, but it just occurs to me because it's substantially true, if not historically true.
Yeah.
The reality of people visiting Jerusalem is that they look at all the different denominations, all the different churches present, and the words of Christ, that they may all be one, ring in their ears, and they conclude that only the Catholic Church claims to be the only one. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it must actually be the only one.
Yeah.
And I think that's an extraordinary thing, because Newman ended up giving his life in service to that. And as you've been building, so much of his theological thinking was in service to enriching the tradition of the Church and the doctrine of the Church. Mm-hmm. So you proposed this great title for Newman, which I really like, that I'd like you to open up for us, because some people might be surprised to see John Henry Newman named a doctor of the Church. Mm-hmm. His writing some of it is very difficult. Mm-hmm. His apology I appreciated because it's kind of narrative, and that's the sort of reading that's easier for me. But some of his theological writing might just be so dense. Mm-hmm. That people find it difficult to enter into, or they think it smacks too much of Protestantism even still. Yeah. This is another critique of Newman. They say, well, he was pretty Catholic, but not really all the way, because some of these ideas, like the development of doctrine, can seem a little dangerous. Sure. But you've actually pointed out, no, that's really the thing. That's the essential contribution, and you've suggested that we come to understand Newman as the doctor of doctrine. Yeah, doctor doctrine.
I think because usually, why does the Church make doctors? It's not like they're like miracles. Like saints are made by miracles. And his miracle, by the way, is what the kind of saint is from Chicago. And it's a beautiful story. You can watch it online about this woman, this young mother who was struggling in pregnancy and just called out to him in the bathroom floor at some point on the second floor with the children screaming and all this. And she was and everything went perfectly well. It's really a tremendous testimony. If you have not seen her,
I gotta go check that out.
If you've not seen her interview, it's really spectacular. Stop the episode right now and go, and then come back.
Okay. See ya.
Yeah. But doctors aren't we don't make doctors because someone was like writing, sitting around, and all of a sudden had like, so I'm sitting in my office, and all of a sudden I go, a miracle, I understand something new. And it's like, I think that's because of Newman, right? Like we say we don't have like heavenly intercession in that way, but we have Church declares doctors because this particular person gives particular insight to unpack the story of faith and the particular things that are in the deposit of faith. And I think Newman's great achievement, why is the doctor doctrine, the doctor of doctrine, is because he takes he's not looking at specific doctrines like Immaculate Conception or the Eucharist or grace and nature, this kind of stuff that say Thomas or Bonaventure or others are involved in, but rather the step back second order, the meta level, you could say, at what is doctrine and how does doctrine, as he says, develop. It's good for just a moment to situate him. This is a time in the 19th century where history is becoming really important in thinking through things. So you've got Darwin and Hegel, both kind of pushing forward this notion, history is, and this development idea here, evolution, right? Dialectic. And I think Newman is in that milieu, but he sees it for what it ought to be in terms of religious things and doctrines, because he sees that unlike natural selection, like doctrines of the faith are not just random, mutations that then happen to take hold because of some sort of like advantage, right? Nor, like Hegel, is the development of doctrine and Christian teaching just kind of the unfolding of rationalist principles, such that like we're all just slaves. Rather, the development of doctrine is an organic. He has this organic model of seeds growing up in line with what they had in the past to flourish in new ways that are still connected. So he holds between both the kind of the pure chance of a biological development and then the pure necessity of a logical development. And you have an organic kind of model of this, such that in his Apologia pro Vita Sua, and of course the essay on development of doctrine, his kind of test is, if you brought, he does this a bunch of times, if you brought Ambrose or Augustine, you woke them up and brought them today, they would not immediately recognize themselves in the world, but pretty quickly they would think about it and they would decide and choose where they felt comfortable, like where actually was where they were going, telling them without knowing. And he says this is one of the reasons he converts is because he just found like they would be Catholics. He found the people that if you brought them later and woke them up today in his time, that he would associate Protestants with were Arians and monophysites, were heretics. And so he realized like his point, this beautiful point at the Apologia pro Vita Sua.
That's a lot more savage than wandering around Jerusalem.
He said, thinking
about the unity of the church.
I looked in the mirror and I saw myself a monophysite, right, in this sort of thing. And the realization, so he has this developed in the essay, and he has developed this in other places, that no, doctrine does kind of unfold. The deposit of the faith is brought to light, and things are developed. But nonetheless, it's not random helter-skelter. It's this sense of there's a continuity in the main line. And he has all these points, which we may get into, these notes of how you tell, a criteria. This is why he's the doctor of doctrine. He's not just saying, hey, doctrine develops, but he says, here's the doctrine about how doctrine develops, which I think is very helpful. And I think something the church has just taken aboard because it recognized that's what they all believed. It's not like Newman gave a new thing and we took that theory. Newman's doctrine himself is a development of what the church has always thought about, going from Jesus saying, I and the Father are one, to Nicaea saying there are three persons of the Trinity.
This is an urgent question because what we're seeing in the Catholic Church, in my view, in the United States, is something like what was happening in Anglicanism at the time. And you brought up the principle lex orandi, lex credendi.
Yeah.
And I think that there are many people that feel deeply the changes that were made to the liturgy after the Second Vatican Council and are rightly disturbed by how some of those changes were implemented, by the lack of a catechesis, this tremendous failure on the Church's part to explain her teachings, but also like the full-scale abandonment of the vehicles for educating Catholics. I mean, the whole thing was just so obviously such a mess.
Yeah.
But it leaves people to ask this question: what is essential about the tradition? What is it that I really believe? And many people are still feeling lost because of that. And I think that's what so many younger Catholics, millennials, Gen Z, both have been asking ourselves.
Yeah.
What is really essential? Where do we cling to? And it's part of why we like more traditional liturgy, because it hearkens to the past and allows us to make that connection with the figures of the past that we want to be bound up with.
This is a great point because we generally read development as future-oriented, and Newman's work on development is that it's past-oriented. It's a conserving kind of development of, so just like a seed develops into a tree, you think, oh, it's the tree, but it's conserving what was already there and letting it flourish, letting it grow, but always looking back. And for him, one of the major marks of development is a sort of conservative action on the past, that it collates and makes sense of the past, not breaks with it. And I think that Pope Leo the 14th is wise in putting forth at this time, as you say, Newman, Cardinal Newman, as a doctor to say, no, he's got a good sense that actually is really valuable for us, not just eternally in terms of thinking about doctrine, but in this particular moment, because Leo's about peace and trying to get us united, and the church, has this tendency to, development was so radical in a sense, you could say, without, as you say, the catechesis, this kind of stuff, okay? There was no proving of the credentials of a development. This was, and the way that Newman lays out, here's what really will characterize a true doctrinal development. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean it wasn't or couldn't be developed, but if you're not given any account of this, then you might go to the other side, the Scylla Charybdis business, and say, we're just staying at the seed level. Like, we're just going back, and then we're good there, and that's where we go. And Newman says the church is always developing, enriching, not changing, but enriching and bringing its doctrines and its practices to full flourishing. We've always got more to go. And so Newman provides the kind of via media that wasn't true in ecclesiology. Anglicanism wasn't the via media, the middle way between Protestantism and Catholicism. That failed. But his account of development, I think, Ulfilas culpa, he learned from that attempt of it that there is the via media of the development between Hegel and Darwin, between radical separation and then, or just kind of like static cling to some logical sequence. No. There's historical development that the church, because of the magisterium and otherwise, but it has to be in conservation of the past and in logical sequence, in anticipation of the future, in continuity of principles and types. He has all these markers that hedge in and make it very clear that the forward march of unfolding of doctrine is a careful procedure and not something that just has, wherever the Spirit blows. That is not, and nor would you ever imagine an Englishman would say such a thing. This is why when people, sometimes progressives will take Newman as their guy, in the way that sometimes Thomas More is seen as like a man for all seasons in terms of political conscience alone and freedom of speech. No, he was a Catholic. Newman is a British Catholic. Like, he's a Tory. This is not a man who's interested in, this is a man who's reading Latin to his students when he's 70 and like breaking down into tears because of the beauty of these old prose. This is not a progressive man, nor is his doctrine progressive.
Now, I think what we've realized in this episode is that there are many more things
that's fair.
that we have to say about Newman, which is fantastic. And I think you've done an excellent job, Father Bonaventure, of defending this idea, helping us rightly interpret what development means. Because when I first heard it from Newman, when I was here at the House of Studies, I was ready to walk out of the room.
Get behind me,
like,
Satan.
I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah.
What are you loons talking about?
Yeah.
No. But it's exactly that. It's a richer understanding that links us to the great minds who have gone before. If someone is listening to this episode and they say, I've never read Saint John Henry Newman, the new great doctor of the church, the doctor of doctrine, where should they start? What would you recommend?
That's a good question. I think his Apologia Pro Vita Sua, the defense of his life, is actually pretty readable. He's a good writer, and it has a narrative quality to it, and it has all. He's a thinker, so it's a story of his thought, right? Not just life. He's not telling you like how he's playing cricket and that kind of stuff. It's a story of his thought. That's very good. If you want like a novelistic version of that, his first publication as a Catholic was Loss and Gain. So here it is. One of our Godsplaining retreaters, Sean, gave me this copy, and I'm going through reading with Father Gregory. Loss and Gain is like Apologia Pro Vita Sua as a novel with him as a character named Charles Redding, roughly. And so you see you can have all the debates and the development and that kind of thing there. Those are two. So Loss and Gain is the novelistic version, and Apologia Pro Vita Sua is the autobiographical version, which is spectacular. I think it's like Guston's Confessions or Thomas Merton's Seven-Story Mountain. I think it's just a necessary read for the lives of great Catholic thinkers, you could say.
My favorite work from Newman, my absolute favorite work from Newman, is The Dream of Gerontius.
That's good too.
Which is incredible, a great depiction of the afterlife. It's a rich theological work. It's not a theological treatise.
Yeah, and it's not long either, but it's beautiful. It's devotional,
and it gives you a sense of what Newman loved about the church, the depiction of a soul's final journey, before God, and it ends with just an extraordinary stanza with the guardian angel leading the soul to the edge of the lake of purgatory, essentially, that it must cross. So maybe I could talk you into doing an episode about this poem. We'll see.
Love it.
Listeners, turning to you, thank you for tuning into this episode. We are so grateful to those of you who support us financially. If you're not a Godsplaining Patreon benefactor, please consider becoming one. We do need your support. This project is just a hobby, and we don't make any money, so you make this project possible. Please follow us. It really helps if you hit the subscribe button, get notifications on YouTube so that you can get the latest episodes, especially, but wherever you listen to your podcasts, on Spotify, on Apple iTunes, all these places. Follow us, leave a 5-star review. Your comments about the show, whether you're making a comment on an episode about YouTube or connecting with us in Apple Podcasts, wherever you are, your comments help new listeners find the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with someone you think could benefit from it, especially a Protestant who needs to become a Catholic, because everyone should be a Catholic, because being Catholic is the best. Know that the greatest thing that you can do to help us is to pray for us, and please be assured that we are praying for you. God bless. Would Michael Scott subscribe to this YouTube channel?
Would Wayne Gretzky encourage him to do so?
Would St. Thomas Aquinas?
Yes, that's for darn sure. But Wayne Gretzky makes 100% of the shots that Michael Scott doesn't take, so it's hard to say. All I know is that you ought to subscribe.
Whether you're stuck in the office or on your way home from it, follow Godsplaining.
Blammo.